The mansion sat at the top of Banana Island like a crown nobody had earned the right to wear. 7 bedrooms. 4 reception halls. A wine cellar that held bottles older than most marriages in Lagos. A swimming pool that reflected the sky so perfectly that standing at its edge, you couldn't tell where the water ended and the heavens began. And at 6:15 every single morning, before the chef arrived, before the security team changed shifts, before Lagos even remembered it was alive, Amara was already there. She moved through the house like water moves through a valley. Quietly, purposefully, without disturbing a single thing that wasn't meant to be disturbed. She was 26 years old, with the kind of face that made people look twice, not because she demanded attention, but because something in her expression suggested a world behind her eyes that the visible one couldn't contain. Her cheekbones sat high and proud. Her hands, though they held mops and polished silver and iron shirts worth more than her monthly salary, were the hands of someone who had once held books with the same reverence others reserve for prayer. She wore her uniform, navy blue, crisp, modest, like it was armor. She needed it to be. Dominic Ease had been named one of Forbes Africa's top 10 under 40 for 3 consecutive years. He ran Ease Group, a conglomerate with fingers in oil, real estate, telecommunications, and luxury hospitality across 12 African countries. He was 34 years old, built like someone who took his 6 a.m. gym sessions as seriously as his board meetings, and he wore his wealth the way most men wear skin, completely naturally, without thinking about it. He was also, by every reliable account, absolutely impossible to work for. 3 housekeepers in 8 months. 2 personal assistants in 1 year. A chef who lasted 6 weeks before submitting a resignation letter that reportedly contained the sentence, "I did not survive culinary school in Paris to be spoken to like furniture." But Amara had lasted 4 months. Longer than anyone else. Not because she was desperate, though her reasons for being there were more complicated than desperation. Because she had decided, very deliberately, that she would not break. The morning it all began, the morning the story truly started, Dominic came down the grand staircase at 7:45 in a mood that filled the room before he did. Amara was arranging fresh calla lilies in the entrance hall. White. Long-stemmed. She had read once in a design magazine that calla lilies in an entrance communicated quiet confidence rather than the desperate showiness of roses. She'd taken to arranging them herself after the florist delivered them each Tuesday, finding the task oddly meditative. She heard his footsteps first. She always heard his footsteps first. "Where's my phone charger?" His voice. Flat. Demanding. Not a question so much as an accusation. Amara set down the last lily, turned, and looked at him without flinching. He was already in his suit, deep charcoal, perfectly cut, a watch on his wrist that could have purchased a small car. His tie was loose, which told her the morning had started badly before it reached her. "It's on your desk, sir. Left side. I plugged it in last night after you left it on the kitchen counter." He stared at her for a moment. Not gratitude. Not acknowledgement. Just a slight recalibration in his expression, as if he was adjusting a figure in a mental spreadsheet. Then he turned and walked away without another word. Amara turned back to her flowers. She allowed herself exactly 3 seconds to breathe through it. Then she smiled, not for him, not for anyone watching, just a small, private smile that belonged entirely to herself. Not today, it said. Not ever. His name was on the lease of this mansion, but Amara knew who truly ran it. Mrs. Josephine Ease, Dominic's mother, did not live in the house. She lived 20 minutes away in her own fortress on Victoria Island, a woman who had decided sometime in her 60s that distance was simply a form of control exercised with more dignity. She visited 3 times a week, unannounced, always dressed as though she was attending a state dinner, and she inspected the house the way generals inspect battlefields, looking for failures, not victories. She was 62 years old, had buried 1 husband and outlasted 2 business partners, and wore her silver hair in a severe bun that seemed to pull the kindness right off her face. She did not like Amara. This was not personal. Mrs. Josephine Ease did not like any woman who entered her son's orbit. But there was something about Amara, something she couldn't name and therefore couldn't neutralize, that made her dislike sharpened, particular. "You, girl. What is your surname?" she had asked, the second week of Amara's employment, standing in the kitchen watching Amara prepare the household inventory.
Ose, ma.
Mrs. Josephine had repeated it like she was testing its weight.
Ose.
"That's Ghanaian." "Yes, ma." "And your people? What do they do?" Amara had looked up from her clipboard.
Steady.
"Unreadable." "They're well. Thank you for asking." It wasn't an answer. They both knew it. Mrs. Josephine's eyes had narrowed with the precision of a woman who had spent a lifetime reading people, and something in Amara's calmness had disturbed her. The way a locked door disturbs you not because of what's behind it, but because you realize you don't have the key. "Make sure the silver is properly polished before Friday," she had said finally, and swept out of the kitchen. It was the closest thing to a retreat she had ever performed. Tiffany arrived on a Thursday in October. She came in a white Range Rover with a driver and 3 Louis Vuitton suitcases, wearing sunglasses indoors and a silk blouse that cost more than Amara's entire wardrobe. She was 28, the daughter of a Lagos senator, and she had been dating Dominic for 7 months with an intensity that she wore like a second perfume. She was beautiful. Amara registered this the way she registered most things, factually, without emotion attached. Tiffany looked at Amara the way certain people look at furniture they're not sure they want in the room. "You're the new housekeeper?" "Yes, ma." "How long have you been here?" "For months." Tiffany's smile was a very specific shape, wide enough to be visible, thin enough to be weaponized. The others didn't last very long. "I hope you're planning to be professional." "I am always professional, ma." Tiffany removed her sunglasses and studied Amara for a moment in a way that was designed to be unsettling. Amara looked back at her with a particular quality of attention that a person has when they've read enough of the world to know exactly what kind of moment this is. "Good," Tiffany said, replacing her glasses. "Because I'll be staying the weekend. I expect everything to be perfect." She walked past Amara into the house. Amara noted that she hadn't said please once. She also noted, because she noticed everything, that Tiffany's left hand, the one that should have held an engagement ring, according to the rumor among the household staff, was bare. Interesting, she thought, and returned to her duties. The weekend was a masterclass in endurance. Tiffany wanted her tea at a specific temperature, not hot, not warm, but existing in a precise thermal zone that required near-psychic precision. She sent back a plate of fruit twice because the mango had been cut in the wrong shape. She walked through rooms and rearranged objects, then questioned Amara about why they had been placed where they were. "I preferred the vase on the right side," Amara said, calmly, the second time. "Well, I prefer it on the left." "Of course." On Saturday evening, there was a dinner. 12 guests. Dominic's business associates, a cabinet minister and his wife, 2 men who flew in from Nairobi. Amara coordinated the catering team, ensured the table was set to the precise standard she had developed, not because she was told to, but because she understood that a perfectly set table was a form of silent communication about the quality of the household, and stood in the background, available but invisible, the way she had learned to be. It was during the dinner that she first heard herself spoken about, as though she wasn't there. Tiffany, leaning toward the minister's wife. "Domestic staff in Lagos have become so bold. You have to watch them constantly." The minister's wife, glancing at Amara. "Yes, especially the pretty ones. They get ideas." Tiffany's laugh was light, deliberate. Amara was refilling the water glasses at that moment. She continued refilling them without pausing. Her hand was completely steady. Later, in the kitchen, the young catering assistant, a girl of 19 named Beezy, touched Amara's arm. "Are you okay?" Amara looked at her and smiled. "A real one this time. I'm fine, Beezy. Will you check on the dessert for me?" Beezy hesitated. "You heard what they said. Doesn't it bother you?" Amara was quiet for a moment. She looked out the kitchen window at the Lagos night, the distant lights of the city, the enormous, indifferent sky. "People only have the power to humiliate you if you hand them that power," she said softly. "I haven't handed it to anyone. Not yet." It was the proposal gala that changed the temperature of everything. Dominic was hosting a charity event at his Eco-Atlantic penthouse, one of E's group's philanthropic showcases, the kind of event where wealthy people dress magnificently and write checks to causes they will forget by Monday. 300 guests. International press. A live performance by an Afrobeats artist whose name alone sold tickets. Amara had been tasked with overseeing the household preparation, coordinating with the event planners, liaising with the catering lead, ensuring that the penthouse, which was used for events rather than daily living, was immaculate. She had been doing this for 3 days, arriving before anyone else, staying after everyone left. On the evening of the event itself, she was not supposed to attend as a guest. She was supposed to remain in the service corridors, available if needed. She was in the back corridor, reviewing the final checklist on her tablet, when she heard raised voices from the prep kitchen. The catering manager, a round man named Festus who had been rude to every female staff member since his arrival, had cornered Beezy against a counter, demanding she sign a document that would shift the liability of a damaged equipment piece onto the junior staff. "Sign it," he was saying, "or I report you for unprofessional conduct." Beezy's eyes were wet. Her pen hand was trembling. Amara walked into the kitchen. "Mr. Festus." Her voice was not loud. It didn't need to be. Festus turned.
What?
"This is none of your business. You're just the housekeeper." Amara set her tablet down on the counter. She looked at him with the particular stillness of a person who has decided exactly what they are about to do. The equipment damage was the result of a delivery error from her company's contracted supplier. "I have the delivery receipt, the damage report, and the timestamp of when it was logged, all in this tablet. I also have the clause in your service contract that specifies liability for supplier-side damages remains with the contracting party, which is you." Silence. "If you ask Beezy to sign that document again, I will send this documentation to Mr. Ease's legal team before the first guest arrives tonight." Festus stared at her. His face moved through several unpleasant colors. "You think you can?" "I think you should put that document away and ensure your team is ready," Amara said. "The first guest arrives in 40 minutes. She picked up her tablet, looked at Beezy, who was staring at her with wide, astonished eyes. "Come, let me check the table settings with you." She walked out. Beezy followed. Behind them, they heard Festus crumple the document. What Amara didn't know, what she wouldn't know until later, was that Dominic had been standing just outside the kitchen doorway. He had come to check on the preparations himself. He had arrived just in time to hear everything. He stood there for a long moment after she left, his expression doing something complicated and unfamiliar, like a muscle that had been tight for so long it had forgotten how to loosen. He went back to his guests. But he was quiet for the rest of the evening in a way that Tiffany, beside him in her emerald gown, could not understand and therefore found deeply irritating. It happened on a Tuesday. Dominic had flown back from Abuja the night before, arrived at midnight, and the morning had begun badly with a failed acquisition deal and a board member who had gone to the press. By 10 a.m., he was the kind of angry that doesn't shout, the kind that goes very, very quiet. Amara was in his study, replacing a burnt-out desk lamp and organizing the files that had been scattered from Monday's rushed departure. He came in without looking up from his phone, then stopped when he saw her. "What are you doing in here?" "Replacing the lamp, sir. You mentioned last week that." "I don't remember asking for my files to be touched." His voice was the quiet, angry kind. Amara recognized it immediately. "I haven't moved any files from their location. I've only organized the ones left on the floor from." "Did I give you permission to touch anything in this room?"
She paused.
Set down the file in her hand carefully. "Sir, I was maintaining the—" "Stop." He set his phone down and looked at her properly for what might have been the first time in weeks. "I don't need you to manage my space. I need you to do what you're paid to do, which is clean. Not organize, not rearrange, not decide what I need.
Clean.
That's it." The room was very quiet. Amara looked at him. Her face was composed. Her spine was straight. Something moved in her eyes, not hurt, not anger. Something older. Something that had seen this moment coming from a long distance and had prepared for it calmly. "Yes, sir," she said. She set down what was in her hands, picked up the old lamp, and walked to the door. Then she stopped. She didn't turn around. "The file on the left side of your desk." she said quietly. The one with the blue tab. It's the Nairobi contract. Section 4, Clause 12 has an error in the jurisdiction specification. It currently cites Kenyan commercial law where it should cite the OHADA framework. If the other party's legal team finds it before yours does, you'll be renegotiating from a weaker position. Silence. I noticed it when I was picking it up from the floor. She walked out. He didn't call her back. But 20 minutes later, she heard him on the phone to his legal director, his voice carrying down the corridor. Check the Nairobi contract. Section 4, Clause 12.
Now.
And then, a few minutes after that, a different tone in his voice. More urgent. Fix it before the 4 o'clock call. Amara was in the garden, deadheading the roses, when she heard his footsteps on the terrace behind her. She didn't look up. Where did you study? He asked.
Just like that. No preamble.
No apology for earlier. Just the question, dropped into the air between them. She considered how to answer. She had been considering this question in various forms for 4 months. I read widely, she said. He was quiet for a moment. That's not an answer. No, she agreed. It isn't. She clipped another rose. He stood there for a moment longer than was comfortable for either of them, then went back inside. But something had shifted. She felt it in the air the way you feel a weather change before the sky tells you. It was Mrs. Josephine who found out first. She had always been suspicious. That was the engine of her. And one afternoon in November, with the specific determination of a woman who has never accepted a locked door as a final answer, she hired a private investigator. She received the report on a Wednesday. She arrived at the mansion on Thursday. Amara opened the door and read the woman's face immediately. Something in it was different. The contempt was still there, but it was sitting differently now, like furniture that had been moved in the night. Is my son home? Mrs. Josephine asked. He's in his study, Ma. I'll let him know. I'll go up myself. But first. She stopped.
Turned.
Looked at Amara with an expression that for the first time contained something approaching genuine feeling. Come with me. In the study, with both of them standing before him, Mrs. Josephine placed a manila folder on Dominic's desk. Open it, she said. He looked at her, then at Amara, then at the folder. Inside were documents. A degree certificate, first-class honors, economics and international law, University of Ghana. A postgraduate diploma from the London School of Economics. A photograph from a State House event in Accra, and in the photograph a younger Amara in a gown, standing beside Ambassador Charles Osei, Ghana's former finance minister. Her father. There were more pages. Board minutes from a Ghanaian agricultural development company, Osei Holdings, with the name Amara Osei listed as a non-executive director. A financial disclosure document listing assets under her personal name that totaled over 400 million cedis. There were press clippings. Headlines from Ghanaian and Kenyan financial press. Amara Osei steps back from Osei Holdings following father's illness. Where is the Osei heiress? Sources say she left Ghana quietly after family tragedy. Dominic read. He read slowly. His face changed the way geology changes, slowly, enormously, irreversibly. Then he looked up at Amara. She was standing by the window. Her hands were still. Her face was the face she always wore, composed, clear, carrying that quality of depth he had been trying to name for 4 months. Why? He asked. Just that one word. But it contained multitudes. Amara was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was low and even, but it carried. My younger brother was 23 years old. He had just started his MBA. He was working as an intern at a construction company here in Lagos to get field experience. She paused. The site manager had untrained workers, no safety equipment, and no valid permits. There was a collapse. My brother spent 4 months in a hospital. She looked at Dominic steadily. The company's executives, powerful men, wealthy men, men like you. They used their money and their lawyers and their connections to make the case disappear. My family had resources. We tried every legal path available. It didn't matter. A breath. I wanted to understand how these homes work, how these worlds work. From the inside, not as a guest, not as someone they'd be careful around. as someone invisible. You came here specifically? To us. Dominic's voice was very careful.
No.
Not too specifically. I came to understand this world. I've been learning. She met his eyes. I've been documenting practices, networks, safety violations. I've been building a legal case through proper channels that will hold the right people accountable. Not revenge. Accountability. The room was very quiet. Mrs. Josephine, for perhaps the first time in her adult life, had nothing to say. Tiffany came over that evening. She could tell immediately that something was wrong. Wrong in the way that exclusively threatened her. The way the air changes before lightning. She found Dominic in the sitting room. He wasn't on his phone. He wasn't working. He was just sitting, which was so unlike him it was frightening. What's happened? He looked up at her. His expression was one she hadn't seen before, not the cold authority or the distracted focus that she had come to navigate around. Something raw. Something that looked uncomfortably like shame. He told her. Not everything, but enough. Tiffany's response was immediate and entirely revealing. Why does it matter? She was still the housekeeper. She chose to work here. That's on her. Tiffany.
No, honestly, don't.
I don't understand why you're sitting here looking like this. So she has a degree and a rich father.
So what?
She chose to be in a service role. If she was disrespected, it's because she didn't say who she was. Dominic looked at her for a long moment. She was disrespected before anyone knew who she was, he said quietly. That's the point. You spoke about her at our table as though she were beneath your consideration. I watched you. I said nothing. He paused. I spoke to her in my study last month in a way that I would never have spoken to anyone I considered my equal. She's not. Don't. His voice was very still. Don't finish that sentence. Tiffany stared at him. The silence in the room was enormous. I think, Dominic said carefully, that we have been seeing each other for 7 months, and I have only just realized I don't know who you are. It was the quietest, most devastating thing he had ever said to her. Tiffany left an hour later. The white Range Rover disappeared down the driveway, and Dominic stood at the window watching it go, feeling something he couldn't immediately name, which turned out, after a moment, to be clarity. He found Amara in the garden.
It was evening now.
The Lagos sky was doing the thing it did in November, burning orange and deep purple at the edges, the kind of sky that makes you believe the world might be capable of redemption after all. She was sitting on the low wall near the calla lilies she had planted in the 3rd week of her employment, when she'd quietly decided the garden needed them. Her shoes were off. She was reading, a slim volume he couldn't see the title of. She looked, for the first time since he'd known her, completely unguarded. He walked across the grass toward her. She heard him. She looked up. He sat down on the wall at a respectful distance. He was quiet for a moment, looking out at the garden. I owe you an apology, he said. More than one. Amara closed her book. She looked at him with those eyes that had always seemed to be reading something slightly beyond the visible world. You were unkind, she said. Simply. Not as an accusation.
As a fact.
Yes. You were unkind not because you knew who I was, but because of who you thought I was. Yes. He looked at her. And that's worse. She held his gaze. Something softened in her face, not weakness, but the particular warmth that comes when someone says the right true thing. Yes, she agreed. That is worse. They sat in the garden as the sky deepened. The city hummed in the distance. The calla lilies were pale and still in the fading light. Your brother, Dominic said after a while. How is he now? Amara was quiet for a moment. A small, real smile moved across her face. He's good. He'll be presenting his MBA thesis in January. Good. A pause. Your case, the legal case. What do you need? She looked at him sharply. His expression was open. Serious. I have a legal team, he said. One of the best on the continent. I have documentation going back 15 years on construction safety violations in Lagos. I have been meaning to do something with it for the right reason. He paused. Maybe now I have one. Amara studied him for a long moment. Why? She asked. He looked out at the garden, then back at her. Because you have been the most decent person in this house for 4 months. And I have been the least.
A breath.
And because I think I have been mistaking power for worth for a very long time, and it's an exhausting way to live. The garden was quiet around them. It is, Amara said softly. Something in her voice told him she knew this from the other side, from the side of the person being measured by someone else's worth. The first evening star appeared above the Banana Island skyline. Neither of them moved. The headline ran across every major financial and social news platform in West Africa on a bright February morning. OCE's group legal partnership files landmark safety case against Lagos Construction Consortium, 47 companies named. Beneath it, a photograph, Amara Ose, in a white suit that needed no explanation, standing at a podium before a room full of press and lawyers and government officials. Beside her, slightly behind, deliberately behind because he had suggested the positioning himself, Dominic Ease. She was not invisible anymore. She had never truly been. Mrs. Josephine Ease called her son that evening. There was a long pause before she spoke. "She's formidable," the old woman said finally. "Yes," Dominic said. Another pause. "I may have been unkind to her." It was, from Josephine Ease, an extraordinary sentence. Dominic recognized it as such. "You could tell her that," he said. "I intend to." A pause. "She takes her tea without sugar?" "With honey," Dominic said. "She takes it with honey." He could hear his mother absorbing this, filing it away. "Good," she said. And he could tell, just barely, that she meant it. The calla lilies in the entrance hall were always white. Amara had insisted on it, and by February she was no longer the housekeeper. She was something that Lagos society was still finding the right words to describe, which pleased her because she had never needed their words to know who she was. She had known who she was since the morning she arrived at a mansion at the top of Banana Island, put on a navy blue uniform, and decided that her dignity was not a thing she would leave at the door. That it was, in fact, the most expensive thing in the house. Some evenings, when Lagos burned orange at the edges and the calla lilies stood pale and still in the entrance hall, Dominic Ease sat in his garden with a woman who had once been invisible to him, and he understood, the way you only understand the things you almost lost, that the most extraordinary people in your life are not always the ones who announce themselves. Sometimes they come quietly. They arrange your flowers. They notice the clause in your contract that could have cost you everything. They protect the young girl in your kitchen when you are too proud to do it yourself. They wait, with a patience that is not weakness, but something far more powerful, for the world to catch up to what they already know about themselves. And, if you are very lucky, if you are humble enough, if you learn, finally, to see, they let you sit beside them in the garden as the sky does its impossible, extravagant best. And they stay. The end. She was never the maid. She was always the lesson.
Thank you for watching this story. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, comment, and share. It really helps the channel grow. And if you want more stories like this, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one.